11:33. We'll go around the table and have assembly members and staff introduce themselves.
Amy DeBosky.
Fred Dyson.
Suzanne LaFred.
Christopher Constant.
Forrest Dunbar.
Pete Peterson. All right, and then members of administration who are here to participate.
Bill Wilson, the municipal manager. Hey, can we get this?
Please either get out or shut up. Who else would you like to introduce, Mr. Foley? Halsey?
Well, I guess we could have Alex Boyd introduce himself.
All right. All right. We'll begin with the municipal manager introducing our candidate.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. First, I'll ask Jody Hendrick if she is on the phone. She's supposedly calling in. Great. Can you hear us, Chief Hendrick?
Yeah, I can hear you guys. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, thank you. Thanks for your service and being willing to serve again.
So, by way of apology, we had this meeting originally scheduled for, I think, 15 minutes last week. I was asked whether we could reschedule for this week to give us a little bit more time. I said yes, without realizing that Chief Hendrick is going to be, I believe, in Arizona. So she's appearing as the Great Oz today. But Chief Hendrick has been serving as the deputy chief for most of the Dennis LeBlanc reign and has agreed to serve in the capacity of the fire chief going forward. So we're happy to turn it over to the assembly for whatever questions they'd like to put to her. We have her resume materials and many of you have gotten to know her over the last 2 years.
Yeah, Chief Herrick, this is Chair Dyson. Tell us a bit about yourself and your career in this field and why in the world you'd like this job.
Thank you, Chairman Dyson. I have been in the fire service. This is my 32nd year. I started as a volunteer on-call paid position firefighter with Central Mat-Su Fire Department out in Wasilla and responded out there doing both fire and EMS. And I, looking for a career in this service, ended up getting a career position with Valdez Fire Department. We were down there for about 2 years and ended up transitioning up to Red Dog and was a first responder, safety officer, kind of a catch-all job up at Red Dog's mine and on their fire department for 4 years after that. Then I came home when my husband had a more permanent job, came back so that we could raise our family in Wasilla, and my husband ended up getting on with Anchorage, and I went to work for the state of Alaska as the community risk reduction coordinator for the state and coordinated statewide programs, and then ended up as the state training director. So my responsibility was to oversee the fire and rescue training for all departments within the state of Alaska, working with them to deliver programs and make sure that they were delivering programs so that they could get their personnel certified to the international standards that we follow. After I was there for almost 10 years, and the opportunity to take a training position and a safety position with the municipality came up in 2012. So I've been with the municipality with Anchorage Fire Department since 2012, started as the Assistant Chief of Safety and Training, managing the training delivery, promotional testing, and also our health and safety program as the HSO, which is a health and safety officer. In 2015, in November 2015, Chief LeBlanc asked me to take the position of Deputy Chief of Operations, and I did that position, moved up there, absolutely enjoyed it. We have, good demonstration. We have fantastic people that work for Anchorage Fire Department, and having the opportunity to be the Deputy Chief of Operations was definitely an honor. When Chief LeBlanc recently left, he checked with me to make sure I would be interested in the job, and I definitely was, because the opportunity to be in a position to make sure all of our people have everything that they need so that they can deliver a high-quality, excellent service to the citizens of Anchorage is truly an honor, and I'm humbled to have that opportunity.
Thank you. A question from assembly members? Mr. Trainee?
Chief, will you be supervising your husband as fire chief?
Assemblyman Trainee, through the chair, I will not. We have multiple layers of oversight between that, and he actually will be retiring out of the organization at the end of this month, so that makes it even cleaner. But at this point, if anything occurs with him, it would go from his supervisor, who's one of the battalion chiefs. It would go straight to the employee relations director, Karen Norsworthy.
Okay. How about overtime? I'm hearing comments that the fire department's overtime might be running hot this year. Do you know anything about that?
We had some concerns about that at the beginning of the year because right now we are carrying a few extra firefighters to help us compensate for the attrition through the rest of the year. But as we've worked through the spring, those extra bodies have actually helped us keep our overtime numbers down. And as of the last numbers that were run, we look at this point for, if we maintain a similar run rate, we may come in at $20,000 under our overtime budget at the end of the year. Again, those are just projections. You never know if we end up losing, or more people leave the department for retirement, or if we have a few that are off for family medical leave reasons or work comp. That will change that adjustment a little bit, but as it looks right now, we are right on track.
Thank you, Chief, because I've heard different comments. I look forward to actually coming in under the limit we set. Another question I've got for you is on homelessness. We have so many homeless camps in Anchorage, and they're all many of them are using propane tanks. And it's against the law to have a fire. So I talked to LeBlanc, and he didn't do anything about it. As fire chief, I would want you to get involved making sure that if they do have a campfire using a propane tank, we remove the propane tanks, because it's illegal to have a campfire in Anchorage, from what I understand.
Yes, sir. It is illegal, and we've reinforced with our crews to make sure that if they're on site for any of that they do extinguish the fires and, make sure that the people know about it. Unfortunately, with the propane tanks, we do not have a mechanism to seize that or store that. We wouldn't have any way to do that. But we do work with APD and the TAP team and everyone else that's involved in those efforts to identify that those areas need to be cleaned up. So far, we rarely see any of the fires that we respond to or injuries with the homeless camps. Typically, propane is not involved. It isn't a propane-driven fire. Most of these have been campfires with wood. So we don't really, not that it isn't a hazard or could be a potential hazard, but that has not been our experience.
Thank you, Chief. I'm done, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Denbosky.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chief Hetrick, I have a number of questions, and I'll start with the beginning. When Chief LeBlanc was appointed, I have a firm belief that administration should be able to structure their leadership to fulfill their vision. And it was the first time we had a fire chief with no fire experience, and I was adamant that I wanted something, that deputy chief ops position, that had significant amount of on the line fire experience. When I look at your resume, I see a lot of education, a lot of training, but can you talk to me about your actual how much experience you have on the line? I know you were a volunteer for Matsu Central. I know you worked for Valdez for a while, but operationally speaking, in a metropolitan area, how much experience do you have in that realm?
So my first 4 years with Central Matsu Fire Department may have been a voluntary position, but sometime with the combination volunteer departments, it actually gives you more fireground experience, because unlike with an urban department with full career staff, you have the opportunity to go on every call. So I had plenty of opportunity to be a firefighter, an engineer, senior firefighter, be in those positions with that organization. And I had weeks where we would, unfortunately at that time, we were still working through all of the poor construction left over from the surge from the pipeline days. So we would have weeks where we had 6 working structure fires a week.
Okay.
And I had the fortunate ability that my employer would allow me to respond whenever I was needed. Same thing with motor vehicle crashes. Those are really common out in the valley, especially during those days before they did anything about some of the road improvements that we see now. Okay. And EMS. I didn't work EMS I only worked EMS for about a year and a half position as an EMT, but I ended up upgrading to an EMT3 position, and definitely did some patient management there. When I was in Valdez for the 2 years I was there as a career position. My first year down there, I was a volunteer with them. They don't have a lot of fire calls. However, they have a lot of rescue calls and EMS. So I was in that position there. When I worked at Red Dog, I was in a company officer role at that point, and it is an industrial site. We don't have many calls, but the calls that we got were significant. Everything from, we had a leak of close to 200,000 gallons of fuel leaked out of a fuel tank. We had to deal with the hazmat, the response that went with that. We had a gentleman off of one of the tugboats that a line broke, and we had to manage that patient for close to 24 hours, and he had significant head, spinal, and thoracic injuries. And we saw a multitude of emergency medical calls up there from, appendicitis attacks that we had to manage because the weather was bad, and we had to keep an eye on those, to a little bit of everything that you could pretty much throw at a remote site. We saw it up there.
Yeah.
I did not have the opportunity to work in as large of an urban environment as Anchorage. That has not been, didn't have that opportunity. However, during my time as the assistant chief and with deputy chief, I definitely been much more involved in our response, especially some of our bigger calls. Fortunately and unfortunately, fortunately we have our battalion chiefs do an excellent job of managing our operation, and so it's not necessary for the deputy chief of operations or the fire chief to respond on those calls until they hit a certain threshold, second alarm fires, or major incidents where they need some type of instant command and assistance.
Yeah. I think I recall
so that's very fortunate that we have that opportunity to take care of that, so that the deputy chief and the chief can really focus on making sure our people have the resources they need to do their job, and trusting our people to be able to manage the day-to-day emergency response operation of the organization.
No, I appreciate that. I remember asking Chief LeBlanc to never show up at a fire scene, simply because he'd never been a fireman, and I wanted to make sure he had the institutional knowledge to do that. Let me ask you, I really like the fact that you have volunteer experience. I can imagine you know where I'm going already. I think, especially in my community and in Girdwood, we have 2 exceptional volunteer fire departments. So how do you see the relationship between AFD and CVFD either maintaining status quo or improving under your tenure?
I think right now that we are in an excellent position with both Chidiac and Girdwood. Their current command staff and executive staff in both organizations are true professionals, and they deliver an excellent level of service to both communities. We are looking at continuing the relationship where we're at, but making some improvements, better communication, better opportunity to share resources, and make sure that we're all operating and serving the community as best we can. For example, we meet on a regular basis now. We have a liaison officer. One of our battalion chiefs is the direct liaison with that department. But at the same time, me as the chief and our deputy chief will be meeting with them we meet every other month. And then we also take opportunities to meet. We bring Chidiac and Girdwood in together so that they can build a relationship, so all 3 of us are looking at the future of the entire municipality and where we need to be. And that's really been beneficial when we're talking about communication. AFD provides dispatching services for both. We've been able to work out a better technology that meets their needs, and that maybe AFD we wouldn't benefit from, but they need a different product because of their volunteer base. So I have, I think, very excellent working relationships with both Chief Weston and Chief Benningfield. I've known them both for many years, and I think we have a lot of mutual respect on both sides. And we've definitely seen benefit from that of how we're working on joint responses out in the Eagle River Chidiac area. We cover for each other, and same thing on the south end with Girdwood.
Yeah. Chief, will you commit to me to ensuring that we're actually beyond the chiefs and the leadership talking? I would like to see some more mutual training between Station 11 and CVFD.
sorry, Assemblymember Dembowski, you broke up a little bit. Could you please repeat that?
Yeah, sure. I was just saying, I would really love to hear a commitment from you to, beyond just the chiefs talking and working, I would love to see more training opportunities between Station 11 and CDFD, because they are so remote. When they have to help each other, I think it would be beneficial for them to be comfortable with how each other operates.
So we have definitely been working on that in the last 3 years. We are doing more joint training between the two, and it was just a few weeks ago that we responded together on scene and for a large event, and they even they had to bring in resources from Central Matsu, and their current command staff are very familiar with our operation, so they requested the safety officer and the battalion chief to come out and just assist because it was such a large operation. And we only get to that point of knowing each other on scene if we train together, and we've been working really hard to do that. So yes, more opportunities. We're definitely committed to more joint training with both organizations, either led by Chiviak and we go out there, or when we're offering training and they join us.
Absolutely. And the last issue I have specific to the Eagle River area, I've been around for a long time, and I've watched many budget cycles, and I've watched some city managers or chiefs come out, and as soon as there's a pinch, they want to cut Truck 11. And I have talked till I was blue in the face trying to explain to people it's not about the truck, it's about the manpower. And if you take those 3 firemen out of Eagle River, you make it very difficult to handle a structure fire for 20 or 30 minutes before everybody else can get there. So I want an absolute commitment from you that would be something of last resort, and that when you evaluate those resource allocations, you're looking at not just response time, but geographic impact. If you take those 3 or 4 firemen, it's supposed to be a 4-man engine crew, but it very rarely is. But if you take those 3 or 4 firemen out of there, I want you to just commit to me that will be, not your first choice. That will be something that you look at beyond just response times or how many responses they go on.
I will strongly commit to that because my background is HSO. I am very understanding of how many people we need on scene to commit a rescue, but also to commit to extinguishing a fire on just a single-family residence. We're not talking a large fire. We're talking a normal small room, even a room and contents fire. If we don't have that number of people out in Eagle River to cover those calls, that's a disservice to not only the citizens but also to the members of the department. I am strongly committed to keeping enough resources out there so that they can take care of that incident because they are isolated. And to that end, we have been very good about when we need to bring apparatus into Anchorage for training or whatever, that we're using Station 3 and Station 6 assets to basically backfill out there. And same thing if we send, if Chiviak has a large event, we're commit resources from Station 11, Station 3 and Station 6 are going to cover that as well, so that we don't have any delays in delivering a quality level of service to people out in Eagle River. And I am in complete agreement with you. It isn't about the apparatus, it's about the number of people that are there. So in the future, we may have a discussion about making a change with Truck 11. We may not necessarily need a truck company out there, but we definitely need a secondary apparatus that can get to some of the places that we have a difficult time getting to. So you will probably see more from me on that in the future.
I appreciate that. And my last question, I brought this up before in different venues, and I don't feel like I've quite had a satisfactory, I don't feel like I'm being taken seriously, let me put it that way. I know the fire department recently lost HR issue regarding testing. I know it's very costly. It cost the city over $700,000 in a promotional issue. There's many, I've been researching this across the country, and a lot of people are going away from these peer type review boards. There's a lot of issues in that particular case. But what are you doing to seriously look at our testing, because we've lost one case, and I think, honestly, I think it's a weakness. I think it's holding us open for possible liability. Have you entered into discussions with HR and the city manager and the Department of Law about mitigating that risk in the future?
Well, just to make sure you have accurate information, we no longer use the peer review process. We eliminated that about 2 years ago in our testing process. We are now, our testing process is a written test, a practical exam, and with that practical piece, especially for engineer, is operating the test, or operating the apparatus, and then we have some type of a technical oral that piece of it, and that is basically being able to answer questions about how they would do their job.
So
We had included the peer review piece. We've eliminated it now. We are now using a professional development piece to where people put together their professional development portfolio that demonstrates to the panel that they have been working towards this goal, that they have letters of recommendation, that they have educationally, they've done the things that they need to do to be able to be prepared for this work. And that PDP has replaced our peer review piece, and we've been very, very happy with that, because not only does that show the panel that these people are prepared for this work. Oh, yes, sir?
Yeah. We need both the questions and the answers to be shorter. We're running out of time. Do you have any other question, Ms. Demboski?
I do. When I say peer review, my point is, who makes up this panel? Is it the chief, or the deputy chief, or is it other firemen?
So the panel that reviews their professional development portfolio are usually officers or people in that same rank who have completed a training program on how to review that.
So, Chief, let me ask you,
it is not the old peer review process at all. This is a totally different product, and it has been evaluated by employee relations.
Okay. Once again, we want short questions and answers.
I'll ask Reggie.
Mr. Dunbar.
I have no questions.
I think that Mr. Bossi was asking the same question I was about the Graham case, how we can avoid that in the future. There was a discrimination portion, I believe, of that case as well. Chief, we have a very high quality fire department, but demographically it doesn't really look anything like the city that it serves. Do you have any plans to maybe mitigate that a little?
We are trying to beef up our recruitment abilities and target some of our underrepresented areas, which are some of our minorities within Anchorage, and also women applicants. Unfortunately, that we haven't invested the resources in that we should have, and that'll be something that we work on in the future, is coming up with a much better recruitment ability and people with the right training so that we can reach out to those candidates.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any further questions? Thank you, Chief. What's the wish of the committee?
I don't believe
We have in the past. What we do is just make a nomination to bring this forward to this. I'll move to approval.
I typically don't do that.
No, we have.
I was going to say,
All right.
sometimes we do. I don't mind it going forward, but I don't usually make a
All right.
recommendation.
Is there any objection to taking this appointment forward to the full body? Seeing none, anybody, public want to speak? Or from staff? All right. Thank you. Thank you all for being here. We're adjourned.